Assalamu alaikum. Good day from wherever you may join us on this session. It will be wonderful to know where you are all joining from. So please drop your country or city in the chat box located at the bottom of your screen. I'm connecting from one of Nigeria's ancient city, yet finest city, the city of Kano in northern Nigeria. My name is Fatima Abdulkarim, and it is my pleasure as moderator to welcome you to this edition of WhatsApp Islamic Finance series as we discuss the Sri Lankan economy and the Islamic finance value proposition. So for those who are joining us for the first time, I welcome you to the Islamic Finance Chamber. Islamic Finance Chamber is a community of finance experts and enthusiasts leveraging Islamic economics and finance to make the world a better place. As a moderator, I'll be assisting you with the navigation in the flow of thoughts from our esteemed panelists, whom I shall introduce shortly. Respected experts and enthusiasts, this session entitled The Sri Lankan Economy, Can Islamic Finance Offer Sustainable Solution, came at the time when the Sri Lankan economy is challenged with one of the worst economic crises in modern history. Basically, Sri Lankan economy has completely collapsed, and this led to the president to flee the country. This further worsens the economic crisis of the country and also puts the country in disarray. This session is divided into two parts, okay? There will be situation analysis, and there's going to be Islamic finance value proposition. The situation analysis, to which our distinguished speaker, Brother Thowfeek, has graciously offered to shed light and give an overview of the past and present economic situation of Sri Lanka. The Islamic value proposition, for which we are honored with the presence of our erudite scholar and thought leader, Professor Abbas, who will work with us through Islamic finance perspective on key economic issues and also policies to combat this crisis. So the key questions we are going to address in this webinar is, how did Sri Lanka get where it is now? What does the political and economic crisis mean for the country? What are the policy options to combat this crisis? Can Islamic finance offer a sustainable solution to this crisis? So it is hoped that this webinar will be an avenue for us to understand the magnitude of the Sri Lankan crisis and explore ways in which Islamic finance value proposition can offer a lasting solution to this country's condition. At Islamic Finance Chamber, we strongly believe that Islamic finance offers a far-reaching value proposition for the global economy, especially for debt-ridden developing countries, to which most of us belongs to. Now, permit me to introduce and invite our first speaker in person of Brother Muhammad Ikram Thowfeek, MIT, who is the founder and the CEO of MIT Global Group. Brother Thowfeek is a chartered accountant by profession and a seasoned Islamic banker and ethical entrepreneur by practice. He spearheaded the setting of many Islamic banks and financial institutions in countries like Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and his home country, which is Sri Lanka. Brother Thowfeek is a passionate trainer and a career coach. And to most of us who are good at going or attending Islamic Finance Conference, Brother Thowfeek is a prominent speaker at a Global Islamic Finance Forum, GIFF. He has 3 decades of practical experience and exposure in Islamic finance and still counting. And to wow you all, he is a CEO, but a rare kind of CEO. CEOs, as we know them, are chief executive officers. But our first speaker, in the person of Brother Muhammad Ikram Thowfeek, MIT, is the chief ethical officer of the MIT group. So, ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Brother Thowfeek to the floor. Brother Thowfeek, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for that little introduction. I really want to be humble and simple, inshallah. May Allah,
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank
right.
you. You're welcome.
What is my time? I'll just take 20 minutes, inshallah.
30 minutes.
Okay, then I can finish my session. Okay. I want to share the screen. Can I share a screen?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Alhamdulillah, all praise be to Allah and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace, mercy and blessings of Almighty Allah be with all of us. Before I share my humble thoughts with you, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Almighty Allah and also the IFC team, Islamic Finance Chamber team, Dr. Mustapha and Professor Abbas and Fatima and the full team for making this event a successful one, inshallah, going forward. And it's a great opportunity for me to share about the Sri Lankan economy and the current crisis and what are the workable solutions that we can work towards to uplift the country. And when we want to share something on the Sri Lankan economy, it is applicable to most of the ailing economics what we are talking about in every nook and corner of the world. So I hope that I will do my justice given the time that I have so that I can cover those pointers that Sister Fatima was sharing. And let me start, inshallah, with that note. Our topic today is the Sri Lankan economy. Economic crisis, can Islamic finance come out with sustainable solutions? So it's a real challenge. I mean, for a country with a 10% Muslim population, they will wonder whether the Islamic finance is going to come into our country, is convert the entire country into an Islamic country. Is that notion? So that mindset, that's what you call misinformed or whatever the information that they will get, that has to be educated in the upfront. We should tell them, no, Islamic finance is a proposition where most of the countries where the Muslim population is very minor, they are capitalizing on it. That was the message that we should really inculcate first. If you take London, there are 5 Islamic banks to cater for 2 million Muslim population there. Only 2 million. 5 Islamic banks in London. To get London mainly to get the foreign direct investment, to make sure they finance through Islamic finance their infrastructure projects and their revenue generating projects. So we have a way of funding our country's economic development. So if Islamic finance is one of the propositions, why not we tap into? So before I go further, let me really find out how did we get here? What is the current finance crisis? How did we get here, the Islamic economy? I mean, how we get it? That real challenge that we really seeing images and images. So many, I mean, in the media, last so many years we are looking at Sri Lanka and really building up into the current crisis. If you really look at, there are millions of people who are suffering today. No food, no fuel, no petrol, no schooling for the children, no jobs there. There are so many things you can talk about. The entire global markets are taking Sri Lanka as a case study today. It's a case study for all, not for the good things, but for all the bad things. We are a paradise island, Sri Lanka. People come for tourism, people come for the love the people out there, the hospitality of the people. Today we are in a different situation. We have to address this, to come out with workable solution. So that is our challenge today. So let me go further. I mean, if I really look at how do we address, how did we get there? If you really look at the crisis that we face, we can talk about so many things we can talk about. Today, the crisis, if you look at, we have a sagging economy, we call it. And also we say that there's no money in the kitty. If you look at our foreign reserves, it has depleted to $50 million. To that extent, we have some billions of dollars at reserve. Now we have come down to the $50 billion, and I don't know how we are going to survive with the survival. How do we cover our service, our debts? How do we repay our debts that we have more than $50 billion of debts to be paid? Not me, my generations to come are going to be indebted. So how are they going to face the challenges of the future? The current leaders, whoever, each one of us have a duty bound to contribute to make sure we come out with a solution so that the coming generation will not curse us. What these leaders did for us, they put in a bad situation and went. So we have to make sure we address the situation now. And what are the media talking? Whatever the media we are talking about, we can pick up so many negative vibes that we have been picked up. I have picked up few. I mean, not getting prepared for this session. Economy is in tatters. Everything. I mean, no proper control, no proper methodology, no governance, whatever you call it, and whatever name it. Cost of living is increasing. Hyperinflation, more than 50% inflation we are talking about, and every month by month, I mean, it is doubling. So again, people cannot afford, I mean, their basic needs, the food, clothing, and shelter are the basic needs. The real need is the food for survival. And people are jobless. There are people who earn per day. The daily wage earners are unable to get the little money. They go and work, and in the evening they bring food home. They are unable to do so. There are millions of poor people who are really got into real, I mean, downtrodden today. Unemployment, strikes, protects, labor unrest, everything we have seen, I mean, during the last few months, and brought the entire financial market to rock bottom. People are scared to keep their money in the bank. The trust is gone. And, people are not trusting each other, the financial system, the entire regulatory framework. I mean, it's all been in a situation, export-oriented. We were exporting country. We were exporting coconut, tea, rubber. We were one of the masters of those. What happened to us? There are other countries who to use us as role models. If you take Singapore, they want to be like Sri Lanka, self-sufficient. Sometime back, I'm talking about 50 years back. They want to be self-sufficient like Sri Lanka. Today, where is Singapore and where is Sri Lanka? So this is one of the challenges. I mean, we really have to think about it, how we were and what is our current situation today. And export-oriented really been, I mean, stall completely. Government revenue, what are we earning? What is our government revenue? I mean, we don't have money to service that debt. We are not earning that much of money. With all the potential we have, we are not addressing the right situation today. I will come back to you. Why we are not, getting into the right situation? I am going to give you 3 solutions today, inshallah, by end of the session, inshallah. I hope that, people can eat and they can gradually implement in the long run. Not immediately, but slowly and steadily, inshallah. Economic meltdown, economic is collapsing, political setback. There are people who have been elected to the parliament. Now they started appointing themselves. So people are wondering, I mean, how come, I mean, we elected the people and now the elected has become appointed now. So those are the challenges the people are trying to address today. And debt defaults. We were never been, I mean, a country with debt defaults. We some sort at the pride of saying that Sri Lanka, we never defaulted any debt, and people would like to fund us because we are never defaulted. Now, once you start defaulting, people will think twice to fund that country. So this is a challenging time that we are facing. We are already got into that default mode, and it's very difficult for us to get out from that image, the reputation that's gone. So we have to rebuild it. To rebuild, we have to work hard on it. So that's what we really have to make sure. The trust is gone, and please, by the government, come and invest in the country, expand your businesses, develop foreign direct investment. So much of government encouraging to do so, but the trust is lost. And again, I mean, if you really look at the basic needs, I mean, in the country, the government cannot unable to, get that basic needs, to satisfy the people. That's ownership. If you are a father, if you are the head of the family, you are responsible to get out and earn for the living of your wife and the kids at home. That is the leadership. A father is responsible to go out and make sure that, you bring food to the family. Similarly, if you have a corporate entity, a CEO or a chairman or a president of the company, he should be able to take care of the team so that they will be paid and take care, so that they are like the breadwinners in the family. They can take the salary and go and feed their children. Similarly, head of state, if a country president is responsible for all the people in the country and is like a father figure, you have to make sure that they bring that satisfaction, that they feed at least they feed the people. Feed the people. The hunger, once the hunger is satisfied, they will calm down. Everything that we do, whatever we do, we have little stomach to fill, and we want to make sure that should be filled. Whether you are rich, famous, popular, you are sick, you are fit, whatever, you have to fill your stomach. So that is what, if you cannot do that, you are not capable of being a leader. You have to move out from the seat and give it to the right person who can lead and take care of the country or take care of the company or take care of the family. That's what it's all about. And highly devalued country, sometimes, we have seen in some other countries, we are taking what you call trolleys of money to go for marketing. And we don't want to get into that situation. Our currency has been devalued substantially. The value is gone. The value is gone. And very low foreign revenue. People are scared to send the money back home. They are watching. If I send the money, will I get the right rates? Will I be able to, make benefit from the money that I'm going to send after I earn money from my foreign countries with the labor that I'm putting? I get this money and I wanted to send that money to my country. So people are worried. People are scared. So, I can't keep on talking about, the entire crisis. Nutshell, we know what really happened, and these are the finer pointers. If you really wanted to talk the economic indicators, look at the unemployment problem, the inflation, the economic growth, the investment, our reserves, our remittance, our import and export market, our tourism, our agriculture, our farmers, name it all. Name it all. That's what it means by economic collapse. Economic collapse, economic meltdown. And we are in that situation. Sometimes you have to speak the fact, speak the truth. Speak the truth of the situation. Sometimes when we talk and give some suggestion, people might not take it now as the truth that prevail. It will not. And after down the line, the truth will prevail at last. Truth will prevail at last by the time we eat for it and take action and workable solutions that we take. Workable solution we take. So truth will prevail. Either immediately, it might take time, or the time that we are dead and gone, we are passed away. After so many years, they will realize, yeah, that guy told us three answers he gave to fix the situation. We never, you eat to that particular answers or the solution. We are just ignorant. We just heard from this year and left it out. We didn't focus and take action on that. So this is what really wanted to make sure how we move forward. How we move forward on this. All economic indicators on a downward trend today. Everything is downward today, much beyond political and economic crisis that we are talking about. If you really talk about, we are talking about beyond political and beyond economic crisis. We are looking at the financial crisis, economic crisis, health crisis, and humanitarian crisis. All these crises put together. How do we fix this Sri Lankan economy or any other Asian economy? Can we come out with some solutions? These are burning issues that we are facing today. Burning issues. And the entire global market is looking for solutions on this. There are amazing solutions there. There are amazing solutions provided we put our heart and soul to implement it sincerely. So let me go forward. Are we still looking for solutions? And for all this, the lockdown, humanitarian crisis, no jobs, all that you can really, read it between the lines that I'm sharing with you on this particular slide. So the solution, if you really look at the solution, interest and usury, leadership and governance and the people, the seat of power. These are the three solutions that I really wanted to address today. I hope that I have a little more time. Sister Fatima, can I go ahead? Yeah, can I go ahead? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So there are three solutions that I really wanted to propose or put forward. The number one solution that we all have to adhere to is interest and usury. When I talk about interest and usury, there are two types of interest people have. One set of people looking at the financial interest, that they are dealing with the finance, the banks, whatever they're doing, that's called in Arabic riba, interest in usury. And there are decision makers who used to sign deals. They are looking at what is my interest on that deal. What is my interest on that deal? If you are charging 5% on the loan, increase by another 2% and let that come to me, charge the company, charge the government, charge the institution, 7, 10, whatever the percentage. I'm not worried about it. Payment, repayment, whether we are able to pay, I am not worried about. I'll make sure that my interest has been taken care of in addition to your financial interest. That is one of the interest part of it. And the second part, I'm going to talk about the leadership. What is leadership and why that leadership is very important. As I told you, if you are the father in the house, a breadwinner in the family, you are the leader, you are responsible for that. You are responsible for that. And then the governance and the people. I'm going to touch base on these three, inshallah, before I conclude my session, inshallah. Taking interest, let me say, how can this interest-based transaction globally, the global financial system, which has been based on interest and usury, riba, which is being prohibited in Islam in sterner terms to the extent of waging war with the Creator and His Messenger. And if we cannot understand that message in crystal clear, and we are all, failed in our duty. I mean, we are really failing in our duty to understand ourselves and also to share this knowledge with other people. We have to get that message crystal clear. Alhamdulillah, today many Muslims have understood that message crystal clear, and they know where do they stand when it comes to waging war with the Creator and His Messenger. So they shun riba, they shun interest and usury in every aspect of their life, and they shun riba in every aspect of the transaction. They don't get involved in interest. They look for Sharia compliant, ethical solutions to deal with their financial transaction. So if you really look at how this interest-based transaction has affected a country, an individual entity. And this is an example. I just wanted to elaborate on this particular diagram so that if you can understand that part. One example, if a corporate entity has been funded by an interest-based transaction, a riba-based transaction by a bank, and the bank gives a loan for the company to expand, to buy machinery, to expand to another country. Once that loan being given to a particular corporate entity, the bank charges a fixed interest rate on that corporate entity. And the corporate entity increase their volume of sales, they increase their expansion program, they got their machine to get the volume done. But end of the day, going forward over a period of time, because of the competition, they can't increase the sales margin comparatively with the interest payment that they are making. So interest payment has to be paid irrespective of your turnover, profitability, gross margin that you are making. So because of the competition, your gross margin will become lower. At the same time, you have to pay this interest portion to the bank. And when you go further with the competition, your turnover gets reduced. There are so many other players. You started your positive will become negative over a period of time. When you become negative, the first management decision at the management committees of the companies, they want to cut down the cost. How do they cut down the cost? By reducing or retrenching labor. So they cut down the people. The individuals have been lost their jobs. They become victims of retrenchment. Corporate entity is affected. Now the individual is affected. No jobs. He's a sole breadwinner in the family, unable to feed the family, can't send the children to the school, malnutrition. So all this will be affected, and he will come onto the street as labor unrest, picketing, protesting against the government. And from the government front, the government is unable to come out with solutions. Unemployment problem, economic crisis, stock market crisis, cost of living is very high, standard of living is very down, and economic growth is affected. So if you really look at the entire chain reaction of an interest-based transaction, and this is really affected globally, if you really go deep down, this is the real fact, how it is affecting corporate individuals and the government, governments at large. So, I mean, if you really want to, that's one of the important things. Then the second part that I wanted to share with you is the leadership. What is that to do with the leadership? If you really look at the leadership, there are so much of leadership traits that we have studied. We have learned from management gurus. There are authoritative leaders, participatory leaders, servant leaders. So many types of leadership we have been studied or we have learned from. For me, at this age, I have learned only there are two types of leaders in the world, two types of leaders. So one set of leaders, they look at what is in it for me and only for me. And another type of leaders, they look at what is in it for all of us. What is fair, what is right, what is ethical, and what is good for all of us. Those are the two types of leaders we really wanted to portray on. People who look at what is in it for me, they wanted to make sure only to take care of themselves, their families, and their close friends, and that close circle that they want to take care of. And they're not worried about other people. There are millions of people outside there who are really suffering. I don't care. I'm not bothered. I just want to make sure it's me, end of the day. So the leadership has to make sure that if you are a proper leader, you must make sure you look at things in a way, what is good, what is right, what is ethical, and what is fair to every one of us. If you can nail down that leadership, appointing the right leaders, sometimes that's the most important thing. Make sure they look at the wider benefit of the family, the organization, and the government. And the third one, the governance part. The third solution, first is the riba interest, the second one is the leadership, and the third one is the governance. We call corporate governance, ethical governance, whatever the governance we are talking about. The governance is the most important. Today, the governance has been taken for granted. The governance has been taken for granted. And also the people didn't understand what do you mean by governance is all about. People thought governance is, all the people get together and appoint a leader and he will call the shots. That's what the people think. And people don't know they themselves are leaders. They themselves are leaders. They are leaders for the flock of the people that you are managing. Every single human being is a leader. They have not understood that part. They think, no, we are not leaders. We have to appoint leaders or elect leaders, and they call the shots. So what is important, what is mainly important is, if you really look at God, today people are looking at the self-interest. Governance is not the self-interest, it is the common interest. Not the self-interest that I should get everything. I have the authority, I have the power, I will appoint my uncle, I will appoint my brother, I will appoint my wife, and I will appoint all my people. And that is my governance, my self-interest, not the people. You don't give position for meritocracy. So who have been, really have that qualification, appoint the right people, look at the common interest, tomorrow ready to put the seat to another person who can do a better job. Now today people wanted to hold on to the seat of power. They wanted to hold on to the seat of power. They can't give it up and go. They know where they will stand when it give it up go. They have enjoyed and done so much of bad things. So they are scared to get out from that seat. Get out from the seat. So today again, we learn from the management gurus, win-win. Win, lose, lose, and win-win. What do you mean by win-win? I win, you win. But the society loses, the environment loses, everybody else loses. So what we want is, we don't want win-win attitude, we want win all. Whenever we transact a business, make sure that we both win, we create value to society, value to the environment. So that's what we should look at. Everyone should be a winner in whatever the transaction and whatever the contribution that we make. So having said that, what is needed is, we all are good in complaining, criticizing, condemning, blame games, because of you that happened. We are very smart in, even from a small childhood, for the elderly person will find out, no, I couldn't do it because of you, because of this, because of my school, because of my university, because of my government, because of my leader. Everybody has a complaint, everybody has a criticism, everybody wanted to condemn. The real challenge today, when there is a situation, the most important thing is you must take action. The first action is patience, and then you contribute. The first action for any situation is to be patient, and then you contribute, whatever the way possible. Whatever the way possible, physically, mentally, financially, whatever the way possible, you contribute to, at least to touch one soul at a time. You can't change the entire world. At least, one soul at a time. Touch one soul at a time, make that difference on a person. That's what we should always make sure we contribute. And when we contribute, at the same time, then what we really wanted to make sure we look at, what are the options? What are the options that we have? What are the options we have to come back now? Now we spoke about the riba, leadership, the governance. What option that we have, to come back the entire humanity? The humanity is seeking solutions for the consequences of the global financial crisis a decade ago. And after the COVID pandemic 19, and the entire humanity is being, bombarded with more crises. Economic crisis, health crisis, humanitarian crisis, and financial crisis on top of that. So they are looking for solutions. Still, they are looking for solutions going forward. It might take another decade to get I don't know what other problem that we will face going forward in solving the current situation. This will take 10 to 20 years to come out from this current situation. But how do we really plug it? How do we fix it? So if you really want to fix it, can Islamic Finance be a solution provider? what it is all about Islamic finance. Those people who are really wanted to understand. I don't know the audience. Maybe there are people who knows about Islamic banking. I just wanted to say that. I mean, if you really look at, I mean, one of the popular quotes I always share is like, there is no one pill for every ill, but there is one for all financial ills. That is Islamic finance, without dealing with riba. And this is the wisdom from the Creator, not me or anybody else. This is the wisdom of the Creator. Creator told us not to get involved in riba, point blank, and He knows the wisdom behind it. We can't fathom the wisdom of the Creator. Now we are witnessing that. The bottom line of all the crisis is riba. Go deep into it and find out. Do your own research. The bottom line of all the crisis, starting from the financial crisis, bottom line is riba. And we witnessed that in the global financial crisis 10 years ago, or a decade ago, and we're witnessing in the current situation post-COVID. So make sure that we get out. And Islamic finance, people think that Islamic finance is only for those people who wear a skull cap or a long beard or an ankle-level trouser or a discussion. This is what the people know. When you have the tagline Islamic finance is only for Muslims. Only those people who have a long beard or an ankle-level trouser or a skull cap that they're wearing, that notion has to be broken. Everybody thinks, even if you want to set up an Islamic bank in a particular country, they look to market their product only among the Muslim community. This is a misnomer I've been witnessing for the last 30 plus years. This has to change. We have to embrace all the other people from other faiths and beliefs and tell them, Ahlan wa sahlan, welcome them. Come and benefit from this industry. We are more ethical, we are more transparent, we are more social, we are moral. So give them the benefit of that and let them come and patronize. Islamic finance is not for the entire mankind, irrespective of what color, what religion, what ethnic group one belongs to. So we have to bring that, Islamic finance is beyond economic and commercial aspect of a transaction. It looks beyond that, not only money. Islamic finance will not enter into any transaction, even if it is profitable, they will not enter into transactions which are harmful to the society. We want to protect the fabric of our society.
Thank you very much, and may Allah reward you. So to recap on what Brother Thowfeek has just presented, Sri Lankan economy is just, is in turmoil because they are facing low foreign reserve because the economy used to be an export-oriented economy, while now they are heavily reliant on imports. And their ability to generate revenue, foreign revenue, is curtailed. So the country is also faced with huge debt, hyperinflation. Basic needs of human cannot even they can't afford to buy their basic needs. There's high unemployment, poverty is high, low labor unrest because people don't trust the government anymore because this crisis is as a series of economic mismanagement, by successive governments, and people don't trust the financial market. And if people cannot trust the financial market, it means they cannot put their money in the market for investment. And once there is low investment, it means there will be low growth, and the country will just continue. The crisis will continue to spiral, And they also, Brother has mentioned about low foreign remittance from Sri Lankans residing abroad. So also when there is low money coming into the country, the crisis will continue to spiral. Also the issue of huge debt, when they have huge debt and they are not having enough money to service the debt, the crisis is going to continue. Also, the issue of this loss of trust, when people lost trust in the government, it means the country will just go in chaos, There won't be trust anymore in the system. People will rather keep their money at home, And also when they feel the government cannot secure their security, cannot provide basic needs for them. So this is a huge problem. Brother Thowfeek also mentioned some solutions which he discussed about the main cause of this, root cause of this crisis is usually interest, Because you imagine most transactions in the conventional setting are based on interest, and this interest is always using compound interest. when the interest is compounding on the principal, so what do you expect? It doesn't, the corporations or whoever rented out money to you doesn't care about the outcome of your venture. All they're after is the interest repayment. So in a situation where you as the borrower don't have the means of repaying, so you are going to be in a financial crisis. Secondly, also, Brother mentioned about leadership issues, because most leaders nowadays, if we see, it's just a norm now. Like, leaders are more after themselves and their immediate family, not after the public good, the benefit of the public. What they care for is about what do I get, or what my immediate family will get, and not giving regards to what the general masses, the ordinary citizens, will benefit from. Then the third issue is the governance issue. You know, as long as we appoint the right people to do the right job, inshallah, all this crisis will be tame, you know, because in most cases, and this is more common in the developing world, where leaders would want to stay for as long as they could, you know, they wouldn't want to give chance for fresh minds to come and try their leadership styles. So, and we as citizens also, we also have a quota to play in our economy, meaning that we have a responsibility as citizens to help improve the situation. So we hope, inshallah, hearing this presentation, Professor Abbas will give us the Islamic part of it. So moving on, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker as a renowned economist and scholar of our time, in person of Professor Abbas Mirakhor, to shed light on Islamic finance aspect of it, given what we understood from Brother Thowfeek on the Sri Lankan Economic Crisis. So Professor Abbas is a well-known and successful scholar in Islamic economics and finance world. He is the first holder, INSIF Chair of Islamic Finance, and a former executive director of the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Professor Abbas is a graduate of Kansas University in the United States of America, where he had his bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees in 1968. MashaAllah, Prof. Professor Abbas has received numerous awards for his excellent contribution to the academia. Among them are, he was conferred the Order of Companion of Volta for service to Ghana by the President of Ghana in 2005. Professor Abbas received the Islamic Development Bank IDB Annual Prize for his research in Islamic economics. The President of Pakistan conferred Prof. Abbas with Quaid-e-Azam Star for his service to Pakistan in 1997. Professor Abbas has published numerous books and papers in various areas of Islamic economics and finance. And above all, Professor Abbas was my PhD supervisor, a mentor, and a role model. Professor Abbas is a very kind-hearted person with a lot of compassion to humanity. Whenever his students run to him for any problem, MashaAllah, Professor Abbas never failed us. May Allah reward him abundantly. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to welcome Prof. Abbas to deliver his lecture. Professor Abbas, the floor is yours.
بالله وفي سبيل الله وعلى ملة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fatima, for this kind introduction.
You're welcome.
May Allah bless you and your family. It was an honor for me to have been your supervisor. And
Alhamdulillah.
Allah, you did such a wonderful job, and your book was published, and I hear from publisher that Alhamdulillah, it has good readership and good followership. Alhamdulillah, shukrulillah. I was listening to Dr. Thowfeek, mashallah, very informative and passionate coverage of the current problems of Sri Lanka. I remember at the IMF Sri Lanka between 2000 and 2008, when I left, was always considered a model country, Asian tiger, and especially was what was important to me was the enormous strides and progress it had made in social development indicators. At one time, it was only second to Japan in Asia in terms of the social development indicators before some of them began to erode because of economic problems. As Dr. Thowfeek explained, and mashallah, you recapped that speech and its content very nicely. Problems are enormous now in Sri Lanka. And it's very difficult during this particularly difficult time where inflation overall is 60%, which means it will double only in every 12 or 13 months. And food inflation is at 80%, which means it doubles itself in every 9 months. In that kind of difficulty, the kind of problems which Dr. Thowfeek referred to as governance problems, during this time, it's very difficult to really be cool-headed and say, let's look at what is this country's assets and liabilities, and what are its good points and strong points, and what are its weak points. As an economist, when you look at everything that is available on Sri Lanka, you reach a following conclusion. This country is not bankrupt. This country is not insolvent, which means that's the definition of being broke, or the terms that people use. This country has problems with basically collapsing economy and not being able to do the things that it needs to do for its population. Accountants define insolvency as to when a firm, a person, a country is unable to make good on its debt when it matures. Now, Sri Lanka owes 55, somewhere between 51 and 55, depends on which sources you look at, $1 billion of foreign exchange related debt. It has $80 billion debt, or $81 billion, which puts it roughly about 101% of its GDP. But the most important component of that debt is this 55 billion that is denominated in foreign currency, and that is where the pressure comes from. Problems that are mentioned as governance and this and that are crucially important, but they are not the key reasons for the crisis that Sri Lanka is facing today. The problems are, some are structural, some are created outside of the economy. Look at this economy's performance, all the tribulations and the problems that it has faced since 2009. The problems of terrorism, the problems of having to deal with the drought in 2017, problems of issues that are not related to its own economy but are externally generated. Look at the COVID. Look at the problems that a complex of problems that COVID itself generated by lockdowns and supply issues, all of that, and of commodities. And that is one of the structural issues that have to be addressed, but it has to be addressed in the medium term. When you look at the economy of Malaysia, you see three problems: immediate, medium term, and long term. Its immediate problem is that it has to spend $7 billion a year just to service its debt. Now, remember some of these positive points about Sri Lanka. First, its people are extremely productive. According to data that I have seen, productivity per capita in Sri Lanka is higher than many countries in its class. For example, higher than Egypt, higher than South Africa, higher than Indonesia. So hardworking people, very productive people, obviously very efficient people. So this is a major wealth of the economy. Then you have the position of Sri Lanka itself. It's sitting on probably one of the most important commercial lanes in the ocean, and that provides this strategically important advantage in the world? Well, it has all of these beautiful natural resources available to it. And so, beside everything else, when you look at the issue of solvency, which is something that is really has to be on top of our minds, and not what IMF says, not what economists say. It is not the GDP that determines the wealth of an economy. So measuring debt to GDP is not telling you anything about this country's ability to meet its debt obligation when they become mature. It is now paying $7 billion a year to service its debt. It has $55 billion of debt. If it doesn't pick up any more debt from now on, it can pay off that debt in 7 years. So if you look at a corporation and say, oh, the corporation has this characteristic, it has the capability of meeting that obligation in 7 or 8 years, then you wonder, why should you call this corporation a bankrupt corporation? What do you do in case of a corporation to see whether it's solvent or insolvent? Is look at the balance, its balance sheet, and balance sheet is asset versus liabilities. So it's estimated by Credit Suisse that the total wealth of Sri Lanka is $400 billion of today's prices. $400 billion, and you have $50 billion or $55 billion of debt. It's only 13% of your total wealth. So if you put this balance sheet of a corporation that has this much wealth and this much liability, it's say, well, this is a very good risk. Now, you know, what IMF and other people measure is the GDP. There is no possibility that a corporation would be judged or valued based on what it produced last year or what's producing this year. They will look at its asset side. The asset of Sri Lanka is 400 billion versus its liability of 55 billion, which means its debt to asset ratio is only 13%. Just to get a sense of where this places this country among all the countries in the world, look at, for instance, only UK, $345 billion of debt. In other words, it's $9 trillion of debt, but its debt to GDP ratio is 345, whereas the debt to GDP ratio of Sri Lanka is 100%, a little over, versus say the United States, which has a debt to GDP ratio of 109%. And UK, as we said, 345%. But why is that? For instance, that UK has no problem in servicing its debt. It's because people look at its wealth and its ability to meet its debt obligation whenever it's necessary. But when you look at its debt versus its total wealth, estimated at roughly about $24 trillion, that puts its debt to asset ratio at about 62%. Sri Lanka's is 13%. So what is the problem in Sri Lanka? The problem is not insolvency; it's problem of liquidity. It cannot serve its debt because it has shortages in foreign exchange. I am not demuning or reducing the importance of all of the issues about governance and everything else that Brother Dr. Thowfeek mentioned, but we have to also transcend this economy to be able to pay off its debts whenever it matures. The problems are so serious now, according to what the IMF and everybody says about Sri Lanka. But when you transcend the immediate issues of liquidity, the problem of insolvency does not arise. So what do I have to do? I have to, in the short term, as I said, because of these other problems, the short term, medium term, long term, the short term problems is the problem of liquidity. But then again, you can look at the situation now and say we are in debt crisis, the credit market is closed to us, we cannot get any resources. That is not where the problem is. The problem is, as Dr. Thowfeek mentioned, is the debt trap that Sri Lanka is finding herself in. And the problems that it has are all externally created as long as they relate to this liquidity problem. The problem of supply shortages, the problem of reduction in tourism, which is a major foreign exchange earner, the problems in commodity markets, the demand for it is down because basically you have recession really in the country. Then you're facing a high interest rate because of high inflation, which is generated from the United States and is spreading all over the world. Without paying any attention to what this action does to the rest of the world's economy, the United States went ahead and started increasing interest rate, which has serious vibrations everywhere in the world. So when you look at all of the causes of the problems, the issues that are raised, for example, about governance, it's not that it's not important. The question is a question of relativity. Where do they stand? If you list all of the problems that are related to governance and bad policy management, all of that, and you map it into the list of all the countries in the world, you find many, many countries with the same problems, but don't have the liquidity problem that Sri Lanka is facing. So I have to fix the short-term problem of liquidity. How do I do that? We look at what is leaving the country. It's bled to death by $7 billion a year debt service. It's bleeding to death. It's hemorrhaging. Has nothing to do. I mean, the question of governance is important, but it is not the primary issue. So this opportunity, I mean, it's called crisis, debt crisis, but it really is an opportunity. If there is leadership, as Dr. Thowfeek was mentioning, strong enough, confident enough to look at what the wealth of the country is made of, what the potential of the country is, and what it can be done with it. One of the examples is just this Colombo Port City project. Look what it has done for the country. They invested $900 million just to reclaim lands from the coastal area to turn them into beach. It was a joint venture. Joint venture basically means that partners, as Dr. Thowfeek was mentioning, are in a win-win strategy, both of them to gain, not dump all of the risks of all the world's economy on top of this country. Look, every part of the liquidity problem of Sri Lanka is because of external issues, not because of internal ones. People talk about, for example, bad policy of stopping import of fertilizers. Well, the problem was if they didn't stop that, they couldn't have served their debt. This was the real issue, although it was couched in terms of wanting the Sri Lanka to become an organic producer, an organic exporter. The real issue was that they were forced to do that on the advice of, well, frankly, on the advice of these external advisors to them. And so it damaged their agriculture, it damaged rice production, it caused problems of foreign exchange earning. There's a drop in tourism because there was all of these other problems, COVID problems, terrorism problems, had nothing to do with policies made by the country internally. So because these are all external issues, this crisis is really an opportunity. And it's also a step toward fighting the most important cancer of all economies, which is, as Dr. Thowfeek remarked, basically the interest rate that has so much negative impact, adverse impact on the economies. It reduces the barakah, it reduces all the possibilities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looking down with favor on any country or any person or any company that is basically in a debt trap. So how do I get out of it? Again, the issue of leadership, the issue of a leadership that can motivate its people to say to the world, I am not broke, I am not insolvent, I am not a country that cannot meet its obligation. I can, but what I have to do is to get out of this trap, this debt trap. Please know one thing from something from an insider that knows what is going on with country, and having taken part very actively in debt restructuring negotiations between IMF and some of the countries that I represented. And what happens here is that if Sri Lanka puts herself in a position which is now apparently, because I heard yesterday that IMF has now restarted negotiations for debt restructuring. What happened? And they have asked, the first thing they want to do, if they're going to help Sri Lanka with its liquidity problem and provide some help, they will not do it unless the debt restructuring is completed. Well, that means it's going to take months and to do it. And even then, what happens is that you have to go to Paris Club. After you have a program with the IMF and Paris Club, you go to the basement of Ministry of Finance in Paris. And then the government Ministry of Finance of France starts intermediary role, plays, and then trying to settle the debt rescheduling. But I can assure everyone from experience that it will not take very long after that debt restructuring is done that Sri Lanka will be back exactly in the same debt that it had before. What can they do is basically with confidence in themselves and confidence in their economy, confidence in their real wealth, is to tell these creditors, I'm done. I am no longer, and believe me, they will listen to you. There is a proverb that says, if you own a bank $1,000, you are their slaves. If you owe them $1 million, they are your slaves. You can tell creditors with strength that I am done with this debt trap and I want to get out of it. I am not reneging on any of my debt. And I would advise seriously the Sri Lankan government not to accept the haircut on the creditors. You know, the haircut is that during scheduling, they tell some of the multilateral creditors and some bilateral creditors that you have to reduce your debt by a certain percentage. I can assure you that these creditors will not lose. They will price in these losses that they are going to be expecting. But what happens is they force that on internal creditors. Out of $80 billion of debt overall, that Sri Lanka has, 55 billion is foreign currency debt. The rest are domestic creditors debt. So they force this haircut on the domestic creditors, which will reduce income for people in the society itself. So both from an Islamic point of view and from an honor position of the country of Sri Lanka, they should not accept any rescheduling that will involve haircuts. But then you don't need the haircuts. All you have to do is tell them, I am not reneging on any of my debt. I don't want it reduced and I'm going to pay. But how I'm going to pay is based on how much I'm going to earn. And what I'm going to earn is based, as you know, based on my GDP. So what I would like to do is continue this debt moratorium until and unless my creditors accept my terms. And what I'm going to tell you is how I'm going to pay it, is that I'm going to issue an SPV, special instruments that ties debt recovery to the GDP of the country. So I will give you returns of a percentage of my GDP growth as soon as you and I agree to this proposition. So you immediately get out of that trap. So you have $7 billion released that you can use to feed your population immediately. You see, right now, the debt service, interest alone, is 70% of government revenue. 70% of government. So what is left for defense, for security, for covering social development expenditures? None. 30% is not even enough to be able to basically meet day-to-day wages and salaries of government workers, much less leaving any money for anything else. So you have to, Sri Lanka has to get out of this, but only solution is to say no more. I mean, this instrument we are talking about, the theory of it was done at IMF, and a lot of people know that this is a valid way of going about it, about trying to settle debt. And Chile, at one point in time, did precisely that. Just simply told its creditors, from now on, I'm selling you this instrument that is negotiable and tradable in any market based on the wealth and ability of my country. And you can sell it if you ever want to, but I'm not going to settle it now. I'm going to continue to service it from a percentage of my growth. So what you have done is to bring creditors as partners. And we've just mentioned this joint venture with China. It is so profitable. Out of 900 million that Sri Lanka spent, they estimate that the amount of land recovered now and is zoned and ready to be sold on the market is $5 billion. So you invested 900 million in your economy and you're getting 5 times as much return. So it's expected that 269 hectares of this beachfront property that has been reclaimed from the coastal area will be available for sale on the market within the next 3-4 years, and it will bring estimated $100 billion of revenue to the government. So why not put resources into the economy, let it grow, and creditors can be paid out of it. It only requires the resolve of the government to refuse to give in to the entire machination of creditors. I'm not saying that IMF is malevolent, but necessarily it works for the major creditors. It works. Its major shareholders are the big countries, big industrial countries, and so much of what Sri Lanka owes to creditors are creditors that basically would accept this kind of arrangement. Because if they don't want it right away, they can just take their instrument and sell it in the market. This is the short term quickly, and I can answer question, inshallah, later about it if there's any. But we've done papers on it. We have explained. There's a couple of papers and a book by Dr. Obai, Professor Obai, that's available, and you can read about it, and plus the 3 or 4 papers out of IMF itself about GDP-based bonds, they're called. So you can read about it, and that is the first step. But it is Islamic. You don't have to go out there and say, I'm doing Islamic finance. You're just doing something that makes sense. That's what Islam always does. Anything it says is logical. And hardly so, and very hard logic. It's not just simple waving of hands. So this is the first thing that the government has to do. And once this debt is removed from the balance sheet, all you have is wealth. In other words, you have, at least on today's prices, $400 billion, which you can leverage into developing the country and go back to the track of social development and save it. In the medium term, the structural problem of twin deficits, a deficit from the current account and deficit from fiscal account, that can be handled, of course, very well. Again, you have now fiscal space. In other words, 70% of the government revenue is no longer needed to pay only interest on its debt. So you now have this fiscal space to start supporting industrial development of the country. You have to Sri Lanka, and the advice of World Bank in 1957, it picked out an export strategy, which was devastating because it made it dependent on export of commodities. And it is a very dangerous proposition, as you see with the slightest, both tourism and export earned, foreign exchange earned from export of commodities are very sensitive to world development. So you need to develop just like Malaysia has done, to start taking advantage of manufacturing products that come from your raw material, natural rubber, tea, production of all of the commodities that presently Sri Lanka produces, to take the value chain and get as much of it as you can by manufacturing those stages within the country itself. This is what Malaysia did. So both for the long run and also the development of the country needs to develop its industrial base. It has to expand it, industrialization-oriented foreign exchange earning, so that the country's resilience will increase and becomes what we call anti-fragile. Some economy becomes anti-fragile. That when it faces crises, the crisis is strengthening rather than weakening it. It's just like human body. If you exercise it, you shock it, you put it into crisis, but you make it stronger. So consequently, to do that, the industrial base has to expand by a large amount. How do you do that? Countries all have these 5-year plans. So the Sri Lankan government can issue partnership papers or equity participation papers, sell it and Sri Lanka has a very dynamic stock market. You can sell it on the stock market domestically, sell it on the stock market elsewhere. That gives investors a share of the profit of these developmental projects. So you can bundle them all into one big portfolio from all the investment projects that you're going to have to make in order to develop the economy based on whatever program, 5-year program, 10-year program that you have. And then you can sell these on the market, raise the funds, and build manufacturing facilities. It has done a good job in the past when it decided to industrialize. It was a major leap. It developed a lot of wonderful industrial corporations. I don't know if I'm going too far beyond my time allotted.
Go ahead, Prof.
So this will handle whatever need you have for financial resources from non-debt creating resources. The problem with debt financial resources is that it has wings. The minute it begins to sense that there is a problem in the country, it flies out. Whereas the other one, which we call risk-sharing investment by people in your economy, that provides the investor, the creditor, with cement feet. It cannot fly out. There is no way it can leave ownership shares inside the country. So you will not face the crisis that the economy is facing now. But again, you need leadership, as was so rightly emphasized by Dr. Thowfeek. So basically, solutions are there. Basically, the economic base of the country, which is its wealth, is solid. $400 billion. It's every year the country produces $80 billion of its GDP. So compare that, and you see that this wealth can be leveraged to many, many times its present value, and build the wealth further. Let me stop here and see if there are any questions, Dr. Fatima.
Very much, Professor Abbas, for this amazing presentation. We are really grateful that you can take your time off because I know it's morning time in the US now. We are really grateful and thankful. So let me recap on what you have just mentioned. So the entire problem of Sri Lanka is also, you have echoed what Brother Thowfeek said, is the issue of interest rate, because the interest gets compounding, and then its ability to pay back the interest, that using their own hard earned money to pay interest is really a problem. It's just like the problem we are facing in Nigeria, you know. For every 1 naira the country makes, it's like using more than 70 naira to service debt. So, and the what is left is not enough to pay for the security and the education. So the government had to go for more loans, and which is further compounding problems of the country. So also there is this issue of leadership, which Brother Thowfeek has graciously discussed with us. So Prof has proposed solution on mostly advising the Sri Lankan government to like follow the Malaysian way of like expanding their local manufacturing base, like trying to produce more so that they can export more to earn foreign exchange. Also, you Prof made mention of introducing like the risk sharing model of Islamic finance, where every citizen takes part in the participation of, maybe like if you are going to give a business or a contract or whatever, let's be participants. You know, everyone shares the risks and the return. Not only one part is enjoying the benefit. For example, if you borrow me 1,000 ringgit or dollars, whatever that is being generated out of that venture is being shared, not like a fixed form of interest style of the conventional style. So I think with that, Alhamdulillah, we are able to understand all the problems and the possible solution. And we really thank you, Prof, once again for your kind gesture. May Allah reward you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the Q&A session, and I'm sure, inshallah, the presenters will do justice whatever question is being asked. So there is one question that says, some critics say that an international contributor to the problem faced by the country are the subsidies from the government, seen as they cannot sustain it financially. Please, what are your thoughts on this?
Let me add little thoughts on that question. The subsidies, sometimes, I mean, we had some little blunder that the government did. I mean, not the subsidies, but making sure that the people are not taxed who are affordable to pay tax. I mean, you know, they try to, you know, make sure the tax rates have been covered. They've been looked at like, you know, not to be taxed in a heavy on the entrepreneurs or the people who are wealthy. And that impacted the money that is needed to the government coffers to take care of the poor people. I mean, you know, to subsidize other things. So this had a dual effect on that. I mean, normally you generate tax income to take care of the other people, I mean, the poor people, on giving subsidies or reduced prices or whatever it is. So that one of the blunders, even the government accepted that was a blunder that was done. I mean, that had a drastic effect on the economy. Drastic effect on the economy. And that's my little thoughts on that question. I think Professor Abbas can add little thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, let me suggest that the subsidies are only a fraction of the $7 billion that leaves the economy, has bled out of the economy. Secondly, it would be an absolute tragedy to reduce subsidies because it was part and parcel of the package of social development expenditures of Sri Lanka that helped many people in the country. And they become productive, they contribute to the economy. So this is the last thing they have to do. They already did one mistake by removing, by reducing importation of fertilizer. They shouldn't repeat that again because it damages. Remember, for instance, the example of Indonesia. It took Indonesia 25 years to cut down poverty level to 50%, by 50%. And then came the shock of the crisis of late 90s in Southeast Asian countries. And there's one of the things they did immediately was at the advice of IMF to reduce the expenditures on poverty alleviation. And within 2 years, poverty went back up to where it was before it began to go down. So it wiped out in 2 years what Indonesia had accomplished in 25 years. So this would be absolute tragedy. It did not be. All they have to do is stop this state of absolute craziness of bleeding your economy to serve creditors. You have to stop the debt. You have to get up, you know, you have to give up this, you know, that kind of addiction.
Dear Prof, how can sukuk and social financing play a role in funding infrastructure projects in Muslim minority country like Sri Lanka?
Okay, well, as I said, we should not focus in a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnicity country like Sri Lanka. We should not focus on labels, buy-in by every segment of the population. If you tell any one of the ethnic groups in Sri Lanka that I'm providing you with a solution that can help the country grow, that can help the country not bleed all of its resources out of the country to serve debt, everybody will fall for it. But immediately you put a label on it, Islamic finance, sukuk, all of this is, sukuk is just a name. It was manufactured. There was no such a thing in Islamic finance in history. It was just a bond. It is a bond because it's interest rate based. But you know, you want to package something to sell it. You know, it's truth in advertising, it's truth in packaging, is all lies. There is no such a thing as an Islamic sukuk that's based on interest rate. But what we are suggesting is to say, I'm not paying you interest, I'm paying you return on my economy. A fraction of what I earn, I'll give you for the money you have loaned me. This you can tell anybody without have to label it Islamic this, Islamic that, Islamic that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides solution for the humanity as a whole. It's a universal message. This insistence, as very beautifully put by Dr. Thowfeek, this insistence that if we are all exclusive, everything is for us, including finance. Islamic finance is just all for Muslim. It's not true. I explained to you this way. Look at the history. From 10,000 years ago until 3,000 years ago, entire humanity operated on non-interest rate base. They basically risk shared for 7,000 years. And then Babylonians invented this interest rate business, you know, this 5,000 years of debt, which was a book which was very popular some years ago, explained that only it was the Babylonians, and they were Jewish tribes that moved from Arabian desert into Iraq, that started this business of interest rate. Humanity takes to sharing risk with other people. Otherwise, if it weren't, anthropologists tell us that if it weren't for this sharing, if it weren't for cooperation, humanity would have not lasted this long. So why put labels that sort of excludes people the minute you say, especially now in this environment? We want to solve the problem of Sri Lanka, and we want to give it Sri Lankan solution, not an Islamic solution, at least not labeled as Islamic. The method, this procedure is Islamic, but you don't need to label it. The less we talk about Islam and everything in a multilateral, multinational, or multi-faith-based society, plural society, the better off our attempts in trying to achieve a semblance of equity and semblance of justice in societies. Anyway, but you can do it. You can take all of the social projects into a portfolio and issue an equity derivative on that basis, sell it on the stock market. Sell it to people, they can get it, and if they need it, they can take it to the market and sell it. It just needs the resolve of the government, the political will of the society to be willing to look at a new solution to the problems at hand.
Thank you very much, Prof. And the next question is from Isa Megari. He said, the solvency is the major burden for Sri Lankan government. How can they resolve this issue based on the context of your discussion?
Solvency is not a problem for Sri Lanka, not a problem. It's a liquidity problem. It's run out of cash. It run out not cash because it can print rupees. It run out of foreign exchange. And it run out of foreign exchange not because governance issues, they are serious, but because of external factors. And we mentioned there are at least 10 external factors that led to this liquidity problem. And so solvency is not an issue. How can a solvency become an issue for a country with a wealth of 400 billion against a debt of 55 billion? It can't. I mean, only 13% of its wealth is in debt. It's not a question. I mean, they have to look up the definition of solvency, those who are concerned about solvency of Sri Lanka, and understand that it is not a solvency issue, it's a liquidity issue. Liquidity issue only in foreign exchange. When when a country has to spend 70-80% of its foreign exchange to service because its exports have gone down, because tourism has gone down, these are not solvency issues, they are liquidity issues.
From an Islamic economic point of view, can you provide any monetary and fiscal policy suggestion that Sri Lanka should implement to gradually come out of this crisis?
Yes. Monetary policy first. From monetary policy standpoint, what Sri Lanka has to do is get away from interest rate as a mechanism for monetary policy. It has to take instead the rate of growth in the real sector of the economy as the rate they will use in order to guide monetary policy. They can issue their own instrument, sell it on the stock market, then use the rates that they will get in the stock market to guide monetary policy. It's non-interest. It's actually a risk-sharing mechanism. You can completely avoid dealing with interest altogether. So the banking system will immediately revert to using the rate of return to the central bank's instrument as a guiding principle for them on their operations, credit operation. Fiscal side, again, a country can tax its people to death. They don't have to. If they need resources, again, they can bundle, because what do they use the resources, financial resources for anyway? There are two expenditures. One is current expenditure, the other one is development expenditure. Development expenditure can be bundled into a portfolio, and derivative instrument, which is equity, issued to the population. Population will buy that. It will first allow it to try to increase its own asset base. You help the population to actually be included in the financial sector, to become capital based, because they now have an instrument which represents a claim, equity claim on resources which are coming from this particular projects of development, which, for instance, we mentioned this example of, it's really a beautiful example, and it should be an example for all of the developing countries. The way they reclaimed land and the way they developed it for this Colombo port city is really fascinating. You have to look at it. That is a risk sharing project. That's an Islamic finance project. And they can do that, repeat that everywhere, in agriculture, in industry, in manufacturing, everywhere. Even in tourism, they can use that. They can basically develop tourism as really a manufacturing in terms of the services they provide, by doing just that. All the potential tourist projects they are going to develop within the next, let's say, 3 or 4 years, they can bundle again and issue another instrument. These instruments will give them enough revenue, give them enough financial resources to accelerate the growth of the economy, probably more rapidly than any other way they would be able to do it.
Brother Ibrahim said, please, Prof, what lesson other countries like Nigeria with almost similar issues like increase in debt, high inflation can learn from Sri Lanka's experience? Yeah.
Again, now having dealt with the economy of Nigeria for almost 10 years, I can tell you the same story holds for them as it does for Sri Lanka. What Nigeria can learn is that they are deeply in debt trap. They have to get out of it. Their economy will not be able to flourish enough to help its people until and unless they let go of this debt addiction. You know how this debt comes about, basically because people inside the country become stakeholders in debt. The more debt they contract, the more they end up in their pockets. This was a point that was raised very beautifully by Dr. Thowfeek. You have these, they will not allow you to move out of that because that's a source of income for it. So they built this political. At one point when I was at IMF, they had read my papers and they wanted to know, Ministry of Finance, both central bank as well. And basically later on, they told me that political pressure is too much and too forceful for us to be able to make the switch. So, and I think that situation is still there. In no country in the world at the status of Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, they will not be able to flourish unless they get themselves out of the debt trap. This is the promise of Allah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reduce anything that comes out of riba and increases everything that comes from money that is spent in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since it is a promise, you see every country that has debt in developing world and also in emerging markets, the more debt they have, the more problems they have with their economy, with their society. It's, the incomes become haram, it circulates through the economy. This is just from Islamic point of view. I know a lot of people don't want to hear those, but it is true. We believe in that. We believe that doing it Allah's way brings barakah, and barakah means for everything you do, you get a multiple return. So can you imagine if you remove this cancer out of your economy, everything the economy has is a multiple. In other words, if your growth rate was 5% when you were dealing with debt, without it, it probably increased by 5-folds or up, because Allah promises that in the Quran. The multiplicity of doing the righteous things grows from 10% to 18% to 700% and up. So how can you miss? Why wouldn't you want that for your economy? Why wouldn't you want the economy to flourish so at least you get rid of poverty and injustices?
Do you advise the new leadership of Sri Lanka to take loan to revive their agricultural sector?
No, just stop that. Stop paying on that. Take $7 billion a year and put it in agriculture, anywhere else you want. That's a way to do it. You just have to believe in your own self, on your wealth and the wealth of your people. I mean, as hard workers and productive people, put your trust in them being able to produce their way out of crises. And then say, no, I am not going to bleed my people just to put money in your pocket. No to debt, and then use the money that is released from there, the fiscal space that's provided, to just simply invest in agriculture or any other project that you have that is crucial to your economy.
I don't know how to thank you, Prof. It has been a wonderful time having you again. It just refreshing my memory. Oh, I relived our time during INSEF, when we used to have Quran and economy class. It was amazing, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Prof. May Allah reward you. And thank you so much, Brother Thowfeek, for your time and your presentation. We have learned a lot today. So I would like to invite Dr. Mustapha for a closing remark. Dr. Mustapha.
Thank you, Dr. Fatima.
You're welcome, Doctor. Dr.
My
Mustapha, are you?
Family.
Inshallah, Prof.
Yes.
We really miss you and hope to see you soon in the United States, inshallah. Inshallah.
Ala ra'si, as the Arabs say, ala ra'si.
Inshallah. Is Dr. Mustapha around?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Assalamu alaikum wa
rahmatullah.
Good afternoon from Dubai, where I'm connecting. And it's really an enlightening session so far, for which I have no words really to express my gratitude and appreciation to our distinguished panelists, Mr. Mr. Muhammad Ikram Thowfeek, MIT, and of course, erudite scholar and professor, economist of our time, very rare to find in terms of intellectual prowess and character in person. And really, Professor Abbas, we really thank you on behalf of the Islamic Finance Chambers, IF Chamber, community as a whole. I'd like to thank you really for this valuable insight and intellectual contribution on the issue. We believe this is not the beginning. There's much more. Hopefully we can uncover and add value to humanity. However, it is hoped really that this webinar itself has actually helped us to some extent understand, on one hand, the issue that the Sri Lankan economy is facing, and on the other hand, we've been able to have a glimpse of idea, possible way out through the Islamic finance and economy. And really, as Prof has mentioned, we also need to be mindful and aware of our environment, the social system from which we operate. As such, label does not need to be emphasized or prioritized in such situation. This is quite reasonable. And I'd like to thank really the attendees for participating in this session. This is first of the many series hopefully to come, not necessarily on Sri Lanka, but we at the IF Chamber, as a community, we're always focused on issues, and we try to see how the Islamic finance or Islamic economic value proposition can come to bear. The IF Chamber, for those who are joining us for the very first time, I want to also use this opportunity to welcome you very specially and to let you know that the community is nothing but a community of finance experts and enthusiasts who are looking to better the world through the lens of Islamic finance and economics. And we believe, yes, we may not be able to do it all at once, but at least we can move the needle a bit, 1 degree at a time. So again, thank you everyone. Before we have a final wrap up, I'd like to request really, Prof Abbas needs to go for Fajr prayer. Imagine he woke and walk us through this before even the daybreak, right there in the United States. But I just want to make this final request that we save this moment in our digital diary by having a photo shot. All we just need is to have all the panelists on the camera and then give humanity a bright smile.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, brother. Thank you. We are really grateful, and thank you so much, the participant. We really appreciate your time, and we hope this is just the beginning. Hope to see you soon again. Thank you so much, Professor Abbas, Dr. Thowfeek. May Allah reward you. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again soon. May Allah bless you. Ma'as salam. Fi aman Allah. Yeah.